truly, everybody at the beginning of the month was talking about your piece in the Journal. Even doubling taxes wouldn't pay for Medicare for all. Doctor, everybody wants to have its citizens, every country, have the best health care. But how you do it and what it costs means something. Explain how you arrived at a price tag of over $3 trillion a year, over $30 trillion over 10 years for Medicare for all.
Well, I did it, and thank you very much. I did it simply by following the literal text of the Medicare for All bill. If you follow that text and basically grant the assumptions and stipulations that are made in that text, you come up with basically a lower bound estimate of about $32.6 trillion in additional federal costs over its first 10 years of implementation. Importantly, that's not the total cost of Medicare for All. That would just be the additional federal cost above and beyond everything the federal government is currently paying for health care.
Now, Doctor, a lot of your work has some asterisks there, and part of that is that the notion that if this did occur, that the general costs of things like medicine and care would drop down towards Medicare levels, which are much cheaper than what many insurance companies and doctors and hospitals currently pay. Would that dynamic occur, in your opinion?
Probably not, and this is a very, very important point. That $32.6 trillion estimate is a lower bound estimate because, as I said before, it follows the literal text of the legislation in which healthcare providers are brought down to Medicare payment levels, which are about 40% lower than are paid in private health insurance. If you made the assumption that instead we continue to pay healthcare providers at something close to current law levels, the total cost would go up to about $38 trillion over 10 years.
I see. Now, Bernie Sanders is a big advocate of this, and he, of course, represents the socialist wing of the Democratic Party, and there's nothing wrong with that. People can vote any way they want. My final question to you is, Senator Sanders always brings up other countries. How can you reconcile the notion that our price tag seems unreasonable if, quote unquote, other countries are giving similar type care?
Well, I would suggest that the experience of other countries is not that instructive in this regard. I mean, you could say, for example, other countries have a national government that is in some ways maybe more efficient than our having a federal government and state governments and local governments around the country. Nevertheless, it would still be incredibly expensive, incredibly cumbersome for the federal government to suddenly take on all those functions of state and local governments. Getting from here to there would be very difficult. It's the same with health care. It doesn't really matter what other countries' experiences have been. Our costs are what they are. We are where we are. And having the federal government take over the vast majority of all current health spending would be an incredibly expensive proposition.
Doctor, thank you for your time. It's obviously a big issue. Very few voters would ever turn down something that sounds so good. It's the voters that have to pay for it that have to rethink.